Hello. I have an occlusal buckle that's one prep that I'm going to demonstrate today. Sometimes students have a hard time knowing what to do or how to fill or carve or how to burnish this thin prepped area that comes out the buckle, or sometimes you're given a prep that has a lingual prep similar to this one. So I'm going to demonstrate how I do it, and hopefully it will help you. So the first thing I'm going to do is take a very good look at the prep itself. I'm going to look down into the prep, see the width. So I'm going to pick one of my condensers to make sure it's going to fit properly in there. And it does not fit right here, not fitting down in there. So that's not a good condenser to use, because I want to make sure I can condense clear down into that floor or the axial wall. Doesn't even fit in some of these other areas. So in that case, you would have to choose another condenser. And I do not have one here. So sometimes you can use the bend of your instrument to condense. And in this case, that's what I'm going to have to do, since I don't have another condenser here with me. But before you guys start, you make sure that you have a selection of sizes, one very, very small that fits into this prep before you get started. Okay, so I already have a plan of what I'm going to do. I looked at my preparation ahead of time, and I'm going to go ahead and get started in mixing my amalgam. Mix is a good mix and not firm. This looks pretty good here. And when you touch it, it kind of dulls a little bit, but it's a good consistency. I'm going to pack both of my condenser ends, or my carrier ends. And I'm going to start to load. Not enough in there. So in this area where the condenser won't go down in the whole way, I'm going to have to switch my condenser and kind of use that bend in this area too. So I want to make sure that I can pack that in there well. Worked out pretty good. You have to be resourceful sometimes, but more than that, I want you to be prepared. Want to make sure that you're packing this nice and tight into this area here. Condense all around the margins. And I'm going to go ahead and add more. So you don't have to push all of it out at once. You keep the lever depressed a little bit, you can get your material to come out and then kind of slide it off the tooth. Okay, so I am going to switch to the larger condenser. This is overfilled now. On the occlusal anyway. I'm going to get this area overfilled quite a bit here. So you can push some of your material up there. Sometimes I use the side of my condenser as a burnisher. As long as it's wider than the prep itself, you'll be good. If it's just, if it just fits in that prep, then you're going to end up sinking it in there. So I'm pushing here and I'm using my condenser to make sure that this is packed well and that it's high enough. Okay, so now I'm going to get my ball burnisher. I'm going to push nice and hard in where this distal groove comes down into the tooth. I'm going to push real hard in there, and I'm going to burnish lightly here, right where this is prepped out. I'm going to go over this lightly, and I want to make sure that this is sealed very nicely along all the walls. Now here's the lingual groove, so I'm going to go ahead and push this down into the center of this tooth, nice and hard, because that's going to be the central fossa. And then I'm going to push it again right here, the mesial fossa. And then very gently go up and over all the other margins to seal them. Now I'm going to use this point just for this groove area, but you better be careful if you're going to use that, because it can, ditch material out. So I highly recommend that you guys, until you are used to doing these, you just use the fat area, okay? I'm going to give this a suction and a little bit of a rinse. So watch this camera, it's kind of in the way. So now I'm going to get my carver, and this is a very skinny prep. So I'm going to have the small end of my discoid cleoid, and I'm going to go over, where these grooves are. I'm going to work on making my triangular ridges. And just like before, I kind of start at the groove here and go up to the point of this triangular ridge, and then come down just like to the middle of where that fossa should be. If you go the whole way to the wall, you're going to ditch it out. So now I'm going to the middle of this, making sure that my point doesn't go any further than the central groove area, and I'm bringing it to the lingual groove. Okay, now you can start here and very gently smooth that cavo surface margin. Now you have to focus on the buckle. And give some suction again here. Work on the buckle, and right here where this groove is, you can see that you gotta adapt your instrument. You're going to follow this buckle groove down kind of diagonal, because you're making your triangular ridge here with this large cusp. Okay, now this side is a little tricky because you don't want to carve into this area that was prepped out. So when you start carving, let's call this the mesial side of your triangle, you have to stop like short. You don't want to carve right up and through that, or else you're going to ditch it. So, if you can see, I'm not sure if you can, I have to make sure that all of the margins are flush from where the filling and the tooth meet. They're the cavo surface margins, right? So I'm making sure that they're flush. I'm making sure that I don't go past this central groove area. And then I have to make sure that this triangular ridge is flush. So very gently go over this triangular ridge. Go over your transverse very lightly. See right here where this is prepped, this is a tricky spot because you don't want to remove this amalgam right there. If you do, that's going to be, open margins. So you still have to adapt your instrument around this to make it smooth and sealed. Okay, and then I go to my round discoid cleoid, and I go around 3 different angles to make sure that my fossa is smooth. If you have to create a little bit of a deeper fossa, go ahead and create that, but listen, you literally have no space to start carving and moving it really far from the area that you are working on. And what I mean is you can't move your instrument a lot, so basically you're just putting it in the same spot and pushing and pulling it back up in order to try to keep from ditching any of those walls. I'm going going to go with my discoid here and make sure all of this is nice and smooth. And I always want to adapt the instrument so that it's touching both the filling and the tooth. Okay, so now I have this, it's going up over this nice transverse ridge, and this area here, you want to make sure that this kind of goes down in and then comes back up out. This is a groove, so you want this cusp to do what this one's doing. You want this to come down in and back out. So be very gentle, you know, make sure that you're not ditching that out at all. Okay, I'm going to look at it with my mirror from a different view so I can see if I'm getting the contour that I need. So when I look at that, it's looking just like it normally would, where the distal buccal cusp is coming down into like a groove area, and then it's coming back up. So it looks good from that angle. And also I'm looking at it and seeing that this area here is definitely, you know, going in, it's concaved, okay, just like a regular groove would be. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and burnish it up, and I am going to use my smaller ball burnisher. But here's the trick. You want to make sure that you're burnishing up and over the margins. Do not keep going over and over and over this really hard, because you're going to sink it in. Always try to enhance what you already have there, and don't ruin what you spent all that time putting in there. So you want to make sure that your grooves, you know, feel nice and smooth. So once I'm finished with this, making sure that this is nice and smooth and shiny, I want to make sure there's no edges anywhere. Flash. Okay. I'm going to wipe it off. And I'm going to check the occlusion. Check it lightly. You can see, I think there's 2 spots on there that are hitting. We're going to get my discoid cleoid in there again. Discoid, right here. Take a little more of that away, but small movements, because I'll ditch the margins. So I went with the point just to be very, very careful. Don't put too much pressure, because then you'll break it out. You'll ditch it. And I'm kind of using the point the same way I did the round one. I'm just making sure that the point is just carving out the center, and the side of the carver is, you know, making sure that those margins are flush. So right here. Another spot. I'm doing this so gently right here because I do not want to break that out. Everything's sealed really nice. off your marks and then try it again. Make sure your articulating paper's not all chewed up either, because you're not going to get the right marks if it's old and used too much. Okay, we're good. Shine it up again. Fill out your paperwork and then have me come and check it. One thing that I want you to be sure of, though, before I come, that, it's not an occlusion, and you check all of your margins and make sure they're nice and smooth. The tip of your Explorer is not going to get caught on anything, okay?